of our fast and vigil and our speakers this evening. You will go away so well informed. Many of you will be crying, probably I will, on the sidelines. But first and foremost, I'd love to introduce you to my beautiful friend, beautiful human being, one of the fathers of Journey of Hope. I am so blessed that he's here tonight and that he's able to make it. Everyone, a round of applause for George White. Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing. I love this man.
Okay, Abe just stepped up. Gotcha. And wanted me to explain why we are here. I believe we're here as part of our effort to end the death penalty. The fast and vigil started 32 years ago.
33. It's a 33rd year.
I have been to 31 of the fast and vigils, and I'm still coming.
Yeah.
Woo! My name is George White, and I personally call Northern Virginia home. I was born and raised in Southern California, but then I spent most of my adult life in Alabama and North Florida. In 1985, I was living my little piece of the American dream in Enterprise, Alabama. I was married. My wife's name was Charlene. My two children, Tom was 12 and Christy, my daughter, was 5. I was at home, had just come in from work. I was vice president and general manager of an independent chain of building supplies. And I had come in. My wife, Charlene, and I were going out to dinner and a movie. It was a plan. But the phone rang and there was a man on the other end. And he asked if I was the Mr. White from Townsend Building Supply, and I said I was. And he apologized for calling me at the house. Said he had kind of an emergency situation. It had a circuit breaker go out. It was hooked up to a freezer. And was there any way I could help him out? And I kind of mumbled under my breath, but then I said, sure. I tell you what, I'll meet you out at the store in 10, 15 minutes. When I hung up the phone, Char asked who it was, and I said it was a fellow that needed some help, and I told him I'd meet him out at the store. And she said, well, why don't I ride out there with you, and maybe you won't get caught up too long, and maybe we can make the 7 o'clock movie. She knew me well. So we went out to the store. When we got there, there wasn't anybody there yet, and we went on inside. About 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I went to the door expecting a grateful customer. Instead, we were confronted by a man with a gun. I opened the safe. I gave him what was there. I gave him my wallet. Char gave him her purse. And then he told us to go out there, and he gestured out to the showroom area where the cash registers were. I knew there wasn't money in the registers, but he had the gun. As we started out the door, Char was a little bit ahead of me, and he was behind. And we started through the door, and Char stumbled. And the first shot was fired. And again, and again, and again, and again. My next conscious thought, I was lying on the floor. I had been struck 3 times. In the arm, the leg, here in the abdomen area. And Shar was lying face down in a pool of blood on the floor. And he was gone. I went to Shar. I lifted her head, and then I saw her face. It was for me the absolute confirmation that life is sometimes devoid of all reason, and there are things beyond my ability to comprehend. I got to a phone. I called for help. The police came out. Shar was pronounced dead. I obviously lived. But for my family and I, that was just the beginning of the nightmare. 16 months later, I was arrested and charged with the capital murder of my wife. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew it was happening, but I could not comprehend how they were accusing me of my wife's murder. I was held without bond for 14 months. And then we went to trial. I was still clinging to what I'd been brought up to believe, that once we got to trial, the truth would out, and justice would prevail, whatever that is. I knew it couldn't be made right, but I thought it somehow could be brought into some kind of balance. And I was wrong. Following a 2-week trial, I was convicted of the murder of my wife. I was fortunate. I could have been given the death penalty. Instead, I was given a sentence of life, which is another way of dying day by day, but that's another story. For the next 2 years, I was imprisoned in Kilby Correctional Facility just outside Montgomery, Alabama. And then my conviction was overturned by the Court of Criminal Appeals, and I was released on bond to face a new trial. My lawyer, his name was Paul Young, he had stuck by me, and he had uncovered several things. As it turned out, that had been kept from us by the state of Alabama. Items that proved my innocence, not only beyond a reasonable doubt, but beyond any doubt. The state of Alabama finally recognized that they had messed up. And I was released. And the proof of my innocence was, like I said, brought forward. I didn't receive an apology, and my family did not get what we were looking for, and that was that this man be held accountable. Because you see, by the time they started looking for the man who actually had done it, the trail was more than 7 years cold. Now, I was filled with anger. I was filled with hatred. I hated the man that murdered my wife. I hated several people within the system that failed me. But I knew in my heart that hatred, if I held on to the hatred, all it would do is kill me. So by the grace of God, some family, some friends, and my children, Tom and Christy, they kept on loving me in spite of what the state of Alabama said. But because they did, I started healing. It took a while. It took a while. But ultimately, I came to realize that I couldn't heal unless I let go of the hatred. And I did. I've come a long way since then. I helped Bill Pelkey found the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing. Bill was my friend, and he helped show me the way to give up on hatred and cling to love. Along with SueZann Bosler and Marietta Yeager and Sam Shepard, Bill Pelkey, we formed the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing. We tell our stories of coming from violence to healing. And we offer our stories as a way of telling the truth about the death penalty. It's a false promise, and we know it. So we offer our stories and our experiences as a way of raising awareness about the death penalty in this country. We've got a lot of people that have been with us all along. Maeve, I guess I've gone around while we're here. I think I answered the question. We're here to bring about an end to the death penalty. We know that it does not give us healing. We know it is a false promise. And there's many others here tonight will be speaking that have lost loved ones. And then there's many others that help us get by with the strength of their commitment to help. Because we can't do it alone. And there's times when we get worn out and worn down. And you people give us a hand up. And thank you. That's all I'm going to tell you about me.
Thank you, George.
Amen.
Amen is right. Again, it takes all of us.
Anybody have any questions for George? Questions?
Yeah.
George, how do you get charged? You have 3 bullet holes.
That's an excellent question. I don't know how I got charged because I have 3 bullet holes in it. It came down to when the police got there. Shar was there. I was there. They looked around and didn't see anybody else. And ultimately, that's.
What? There was no gun. I mean, there was no gun for it.
Gosh, you ask these hard questions.
Repeat the question, George.
Gary's question was, there was no gun. Well, you're right. A gun was found finally, lying in plain sight on a box in a warehouse that's been searched a dozen times. They brought in a gunpowder sniffing dog from Washington, D.C. And that dog went around and he sniffed and he didn't find anything. But then a gun was finally found lying in plain sight on a box in a customer access warehouse. It defies logic. It defies reason. The police needed to close the case.
George, tell us about when you took the evidence to the prosecutor.
Okay, this was after the conviction had been overturned, and we, Paul and I, started gathering things and what have you. We went up to Montgomery, Alabama, and went in, and we finally got access to a whole lot of things, and there were, oh, I don't remember anymore how many items we got access to, but we got access to evidence that not only proved my innocence, but it proved it without any doubt. We took that evidence down to Enterprise, Alabama, and went into the district attorney's office. Mr. Joel Falmer was his name. You notice I do give names. And Paul set a stack of evidence on his desk. And Falmer looked up and he turned bright red. His neck turned bright red, and it went up the side of his head to his ears. And he looked up and he said, I've never seen this before. And Paul says, well, I won't repeat exactly what Paul said, but he didn't use polite language. But he said, I don't give a damn what you say. He said, Mr. White doesn't give a damn what you say. But you know this now and forever. It's over. You have 24 hours. And we walked out. I got outside. I told Paul, I said, when did we get that power? to tell him it's over. He said, well, we'll see tomorrow what happens. The next day, we received a phone call from the district attorney's office. And from the judge, and told us to get over to the court right away. And we went over there. And we went inside the courtroom, Paul and I were looking, and nobody else was there. And about that time, the DA and the judge come from back in the judge's chambers, came out, and they handed us 2 papers. And it was a motion to dismiss filed by the DA's office with the judge. What at that point, it had been nearly 7 years. But the motion to dismiss was the state saying, in essence, that I was innocent of what they had charged me with. And they respectfully asked the judge to dismiss it. And he did. He dismissed it with prejudice. That's a legal term meaning could never be raised against me again. We walked out of there free at last. Free at last.
George, what sustained you while you were in prison?
What sustained me wasn't hatred. It was love. It was a love of some friends, family, my children. It was love that sustained me. And that's when I learned that lesson. Hold on to the love. Don't let hatred take control.
George, what keeps you going to come after year with these visuals?
What keeps me going?
Yeah.
Well, number one, I can still get on my feet. Not very well. It is the power of the people. You people, you keep me going. I can't do it by myself. I need a lot of help sometimes. Sometimes to get out of this chair. But it is the belief, my belief, that the power is in love, not in hate. And as long as I can get to my feet, which some days is hard to do, but as long as I can get upright, I'll keep coming down.
Thank you, George. With someone who could have so much hate in his heart and every right, because what was done to him. I've never seen such a much more peaceful man in my entire life. He's kind of like a dad to me. It's just so sweet. I next have someone by the name of Jennifer Bishop-Jenkins. Jennifer is the founder of the National Organization of Victims of Juvenile Lifers. Is an acronym for that. Vigil. She's received several awards from humanitarian organizations such as Concern Worldwide and the Rainbow Push Coalition, for the work against violence and for restorative justice and victim-related issues. She travels the nation, specifically speaking in workshops alongside her husband, Bill Jenkins. So everyone, please welcome Jennifer Bishop-Jenkins.
Why do I have to follow George? That's just not fair. It is so good to see so many of my old dear friends, and it has been a long time. And so the first thing I have to do is apologize that I haven't seen you all in years, and it is so good to be back. But I live in Virginia now. I don't live in Chicago anymore. So this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to reconnect, and I'm so glad. My husband, Bill Jenkins, who is also a murder victim's family member opposed to the death penalty, sends his love, wishes that he was here. But he is working, teaching a class. He's a college professor. He's teaching online tonight. But it is because of you all and this love that you talked about and this movement that we're in, that I've been in since 1990, when my sister, her husband, and their baby were murdered. I have found this love. I know what you're talking about, George. Yeah, it's an extraordinary bond that we all share. But I got the bonus of that because I met my husband, Bill Jenkins, doing this work. How many of you all may have been at Boston College for Healing the Wounds of Murder in 2001, was it? Yeah? A couple of us? Yeah? Yeah? I knew you were there. I remember. Rennie Cushing and Murder Victims Families for Reconciliation, later Murder Victims Families for Human Rights, put me on a panel with Bill Jenkins, and we met that day, and hooray. It all worked out for the best. I think all of you know, because you're here, that the position that we're taking is kind of revolutionary, kind of counterintuitive to the world, right? We're swimming upstream when it comes to the way most people think. And so it's been wonderful for Bill and I to have found each other. I'm going to just, rather than tell a whole story of my sister and her husband and the baby's murder, I'm going to pass around. I brought a little show and tell. This is the book that was written about their murders. And on the second page of photographs in the middle of the book, you can actually see this message of love that she left in her blood as she was dying. And she was pregnant with their first child. And I'm just going to pass it around, let everybody take a look, and feel free, just make sure I get it back at the end. I'm going to try not to cry here. I needed to be here with you all this year because this is finally the year that you all remember. Right in here, in 2013, they said that juveniles should not be sentenced to life without parole. Yeah. You'll remember that decision. There was a series of what they call Miller v. Alabama, Miller resentencing hearings. The man that killed Nancy and Richard and their baby is just now, it is 2026, he is just now getting his Miller resentencing. And we think he might be the last of the juvenile lifers in the whole country that is finally getting his Miller resentencing. And it's complicated legally, but the reason why he delayed it because there was two different sentences, killing Nancy and Richard, mandatory life without parole for a double homicide in Illinois. But she told him she was pregnant. She begged for the life of her baby, crossed her arms over her pregnant belly, begged for her child, and he aimed for the baby, shot it, and then raised the gun and shot her in the chest, and she was killed. What we found out during the autopsy is that we wanted to know the gender of the child that she was carrying, and so we asked the medical examiner when he did the autopsy to please just go in and look, because she was already like almost 5 months along, and we wanted to know what the gender was so we could bury it with the names. We knew she already had picked out some names. And when they went in to look, the fetus had been hit by a disruptor bullet and exploded. And this is before DNA. They couldn't even tell the gender of the child. So it just says baby Langert on the tomb. But that time taught me about love, because Nancy's last act of life, 26 years old, her husband dead next to her, he'd shot her husband first, literally point blank to the back of the head, and his head was kind of exploded. And she had to watch that and then beg for her own life, and she was murdered. And she knew what was happening to her, and she knew enough when she was dying that she took her finger in her own blood and she drew a heart and a U next to her husband. And that picture is in the book as you pass it around, so you can see. So I've tried in all of that time to honor that love that you speak of, George, the love that we know is what matters the most. And that is what has led me to be able to do this work with you. And I'm proud to say that I was the president, chairman, whatever, chairman of the board, whatever it was, for the Illinois Coalition to abolish the death penalty, and we abolished the death penalty. Yeah, there was this really cool young senator in the Senate, in the Illinois State Senate at that point. He's pretty spicy lawyer that was really big on the Judiciary Committee. Who was helping us. I got to sit next to him at the dinner where we celebrated its passage. His name was Barack Obama. Yeah, he was a leading help in that, not surprisingly. But then I went on to also do work for victims, and got involved, of course, with Murder Victims Families for Reconciliation, later when Murder Victims Families for Human Rights. I was the chair of that board nationally for some years. And I can tell you that the number of victims that oppose the death penalty is inspiring, right? So those of you that are, because I know there are many of us here, those of you that are murder victims' family members opposed to the death penalty, please raise your hand. And please keep them up while everybody looks around. Okay. So we are not alone, and I know that a lot of people expect that that's not the case, but if you've had somebody that you love murdered and you know how awful murder is, it's the most basic argument that we have in our movement, right? Why do we kill people that kill people? To show that killing people is wrong. So I thank you, Abe, for all of your work over the years. You blow me away. You inspire me. And I am very, very lucky to, well, where are you, SueZann? There you are, back there. I cannot tell you what a joy it has been to spend time with you on the road doing this work. Very, very special. I love you too. And thank you all very much for your commitment to abolition. And I think we have a chance, but I think we have to change prices first.
Question.
Some questions.
Oh, question. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Jennifer,
Yes.
how did you decide that you opposed the death?
Okay, so how did I decide that I oppose the death penalty? When Nancy and Richard were first killed, we didn't know who did it. We didn't know for a long time. It was the biggest news story in the Chicago news media market for sure, and and even nationally. Who did it? It became a really big whodunit in the state and in the city of Chicago. And there was all sorts of cries for when they did find the person that, because we had the death penalty at that time in Illinois, and, we definitely wanted to, the cries were already coming for when we do catch this person, it's going to be. Right. Um, and I began to understand just in the hearing the talk radio and the headlines in the newspaper and stuff like that of just how much people were focused on vengeance or catching and killing the killer, or I don't know. In all of that, Nancy and Richard and the baby were lost. Nancy's last act of life was to talk about love. And I was trying to share her story wherever I could. And so the first hint in my own mind, because my parents strongly favored the death penalty, especially my father, who's an attorney, and who found their bodies. And he was never the same after that. But I began to realize what a distraction it was and how it took the focus off of them and put it on whoever the killer was at that time. We figured out finally that it was a 16-year-old named David Bureau. And so I just, it was ultimately when they arrested him and they found that it was a 16-year-old and that he was too young to receive the death penalty. It was at that point when I had this great relief, actually, because I was really worried that I was going to have to gear up, to deal with him becoming the center of, I mean, you all remember John Wayne Gacy?
Yep.
One of Illinois' most infamous mass murderers. I was at John Wayne Gacy's execution. This was, after Nancy, after Nancy and Richard were killed. And I was already supporting abolition. And I remember what a crazy crowd that night. Do you remember all the drunk guys in pickup trucks driving around in clown suits, whooping and hollering about woo-hoo? They made it a party.
They also have fencing between the pro and the anti.
Yes, they had to fence off the Joliet prison institutional front yard because the people for and the people against. They didn't want to mix them up. Nancy's last words were that of love. And I have worked to honor that every single day. There was no choice, of course. And it's not even about forgiveness, because I've actually offered restorative justice to this young man, and he has not accepted it at this point. So we'll see what happens. But I'm just going to ask for all of you all to hold me in your hearts and in your minds in the next few months when he finally becomes, we think, the last teenager convicted for a life sentence to life without parole. The Miller v. Alabama decision here in 2013. I was on those steps talking to National Public Radio when it happened. I was in the court. I got to be inside the court as a guest of one of the justices for the argument. I need your support, your help, your prayers, your thoughts, your good wishes, because I'm going to have to go and face him in the courtroom for the first time since the original trial 35 years ago. And to this day, he has not apologized or confessed. I don't know what is going to happen, at least not to me, he hasn't. So, and I've offered him 3 opportunities over 30 years. About every decade or so, I try again for a restorative justice conversation with him, but it hasn't happened. So I don't know what's going to happen. And both my parents have passed now. My father's last words to me, he died of cancer, and his last words were on the phone to me. I was telling him I'm going to come see him after today's surgery, and I'll see you after school. And I was a teacher at the time. And he said, "Promise me, daughter, you'll keep Mr. Bureau in prison." His first words were, "Promise me, daughter, you'll take care of your mother." And I said, "I promised him. But you're going to be okay, and I'll see you after the surgery." He died on the table. Throat cancer. that promise to him to keep Mr. Bureau in prison, I intend to keep, because the man that killed my family members is a diagnosed dangerous sociopath. He's not better. He's been tracked, he's psychiatrically unqualified for release. Okay. I'm all for the many, many juvenile offenders that have gotten out and have served their time and are changed people. And I'm friends with many of them and get to work and speak with many of them. But this young man is not changed. He's not okay, and he's dangerous still. So,
Thank you for that. Tell us how you like Bill Pelkey.
oh gosh, I think Bill Pelkey tracked me down, as I recall. Gosh, does anybody else remember? Is that right? Yeah. Because my sister Jean and I were speaking against the death penalty at an event in Chicago, and he was in Northwest Indiana, and he came to us and he came up and introduced himself. Yeah.
Many people here don't know Bill Pelkey. Give us-
Oh my gosh, Bill Pelkey. That's a good George question too. Your brother. Bill Pelkey is really the reason I'm here. He gave me a way to understand what had happened to all of us as murder victims' family members. To see that work against the death penalty honors our murdered loved ones. That it speaks for the preciousness of life and how killing is wrong. And he gave me something to do with all of the pain and the anxiety and the, life disruption and, he gave me good work to do. And in that good work, I met the love of my life, Jenkins, and I got to have all of these great friendships, and I think we're making a difference. And we abolished the death penalty in Illinois, and we're making progress elsewhere. So,
Two more questions.
yes.
I don't want to put too much on you, but if you could just give us a taste of Bill Jenkins and his work on this issue.
I so wish he was here. He's the coolest guy ever. He's this brilliant college professor. He is from Richmond. He's actually born in Maryland, but from VCU on, he's in Virginia, which is why we moved back ultimately to retire there. I can't believe I'm retired. We are old, George.
That would be George.
No, it's this was the deal. He gave me 25 years in Chicago for where my kids were, and he gets to retire back home. So we live in Virginia now, which is great. His son William was murdered in Richmond at a robbery of a restaurant in 1997. It was a fast food hamburger place on the big main drag going through downtown Richmond, Virginia. 16-year-old kid, really good looking, smart, talented, could play the guitar and sing and wrote poetry, and he was just a genius, straight A student, good looking. Every girl adored him. And he had this new job at a burger joint. The name of the place was ironically Bullets Restaurant. They were robbed at closing time, and he was outside carrying the trash out to the dumpster, and the man that came up with a gun to rob the place took his son, held him up, held the gun at his neck, and said to the manager, "You let me in and get me into the safe or kid's dead." And so she let him in, and he shot him anyway in the neck. So my husband Bill's firstborn son, his namesake, William Jenkins, was murdered at the age of 16 and died instantly when he hit the ground, one bullet to the jugular. Bill was not faced with the death penalty in Virginia at that time. That single homicide was not death penalty eligible, and he was very he's a member of the Church of the Brethren, and it was very important to him at that time to do whatever he could to work to forgive the killer and to speak only to help use what happened to him to help others. And so he's written an amazing book. I cannot recommend it enough. All of you guys, I'll find a way to get you copies somehow. Okay, we'll figure out a way to mass distribute them. But the name of the book is What to Do When the Police Leave, A Guide to the First Days of Traumatic Loss. And it's the reason I got to meet him. It's an amazing book. What to Do When the Police Leave, A Guide to the First Days of Traumatic Loss. And it is he has sold over 40,000 copies. He has sold enough copies of that book to be on the New York Times bestseller list twice. And it is being given out by police departments, crisis response teams, first on the scene type of people. It is a handbook for people who just had a traumatic death in their families. And because he and his ex-wife, when their son was murdered, the first thing that they said when the police came and gave them the bad news, he said, what do we do now? What do we do? So this book is about how you can connect to support systems. This is about what trauma, this book is about trauma. My husband is a trauma expert. He's a college professor. He has actually been a tenured full professor at a university for 20 plus years. And he is working on a new degree, a new PhD in social justice and traumatic loss. So that's what he's working on right now. And his book, What to Do When the Police Leave, is a really, really helpful book. It would be a really good tool for all of you guys to know about and have a copy as you are hopefully intersecting with people that have had traumatic loss in their life. It's not just about murders. It can be also for homicide, suicide, car accidents, sudden infant death, anything that's a traumatic death. So it's a really helpful tool. And that has, I fell in love with the book before I met the man. So it legitimately, I say the book is amazing. It's not biased. I don't say that with bias.
Jennifer, you and Bill are both highly regarded in the broader victim advocacy movement, and I want to call for a round of applause for Jennifer. Now you have to explain to us how you ended up grooming dogs.
Oh yeah, after all that we've been through, we all need a happy place, right? Dogs are my happy place. And so it's so ironic. I grew up with dogs. I've had them all my life. I started breeding, showing, and when I was showing dogs, I had to learn to groom them because you're showing them. So that was in my 20s. I got my first dog for dog showing at 21. This is me at 68. So I've been in dogs a long time, and they are just my happy place. They are my therapy. They are my joy. And so I was a career high school history teacher. That's what I did for 30 plus years. I was a high school vice principal. At one point, I taught some college too. But I've been grooming dogs for the last 20 years because it's just therapeutic. It's artistic. It's fun. I like all dogs, and dogs don't. Dogs are really nice for the most part, even if they're, even if they are cautious. So it's really ironic, but yeah, I have this website, groomersguide.com, if you want to check me out. But I have become, can I say this? I always.
It's an award-winning dog grooming person.
It's worse than that. Now I actually, I've had a really interesting life with the abolition of the death penalty in Illinois under my belt, and the passage of Marsy's Law. How many of you all know what Marsy's Law is? So Marsy's Law, every one of you should know. Marcy is spelled with an S, Marsys, law.us website. Marsy's Law is a victims' rights constitutional amendment that gives crime victims enforceable rights gives them the same power to like file motions or to assert standing with the prosecutors. And because most victims' rights, the right to be notified, the right to be present at proceedings, they're usually not enforceable. At Nancy and Richard's sentencing, we were called the morning of the sentencing of Nancy and Richard's murderer. We were called and told not to come, that they were not going to let us give our victim impact statements in Illinois because the court was too busy that day. Even though we had a constitutional right in Illinois, it was weak constitutional language. And that's how I got involved with Marcy's Law to strengthen that. So I have led a 6-year campaign in partnership with the Attorney General of Illinois to amend the Illinois Constitution. So I've led the abolition of the death penalty effort in Illinois. I've amended the Illinois Constitution for crime victims' rights. And standing right in that building over there, I organized the Virginia Tech victims to lobby the Congress for the passage of the NICS Improvement Act, the National Instant Check System, after the Virginia Tech massacre. And we got that passed. So, yeah. But back to the dogs, and then I'll stop. Yeah, the dogs have been my happy place. I have 5 dogs now. How many of you have dogs? What kind? What do you have?
He's a Vizsla pity mix with one eye and an underbite.
A
and crooked
Vizsla
teeth.
mix. I gotta see that. I
So
wanna see
cute.
pictures. Oh my god.
Cats.
Cats. I used to breed Himalayans, so I love cats. So I have 3 miniature poodles, a husband, wife, and a daughter, and 2 Australian shepherds right now. But I have had over my lifetime about 10 or 12 different breeds. And the thing that has made me more famous than anything I've done is that I've developed a curriculum for groomers. Because dog groomers, there's no regulation of the industry at all. It's bad, actually, guys. It's desperately needed. So being the school teacher with a master's degree in curriculum and master's degree in history and teaching about dogs to people, I just developed a curriculum called the 15 Code Types, and I am now traveling the world, and I'm apparently like world famous in this dog world now. So groomersguide.com is my website, you can see. But I have been, just in the last 2 years, I've been to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, spoken twice in Canada, spoken 3 times in England, once in France, once in Finland, and all over the US. And so dogs have been my happy place, my therapy lately. So thanks for asking.
Let me know if you need somebody curious who does.
I'll take you there for sure. Love you guys. Thank you all for all you do.
I have to come back next year. Same death.
I will.
Same death.
I live here now.
Bring a dog.
I'll bring my
Yeah.
dog.
I brought my dog.
Bring them all.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. I think what I got out of that was love. You know, your daughter's focus was on love. And it's obvious her focus was on love as well. I want to slow it up a bit, and I want to bring up Jan Powell so she can tell us what's going on in Idaho. Jan, what's the news?
It's not good, but I'll get to that in a minute. My name is Jan Powell.
Mike.
Can't hear.
Right here?
Front of your mouth.
Okay,
Yeah.
does that work?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, take
Closer. Let's
rock
go.
star, like a rock star.
Something that I've never been to.
Yes, you are.
My husband and I live in Eagle, Idaho. He's at the back there.
Where's Dave?
There he is. We're part of the fledgling Idahoans against the death penalty. And I also want to mention that I am involved in volunteer work at our prisons with a program called StoryLink Idaho. We take books in, children's books in, and residents who've been approved can read those books for their kids. We record them. It's uploaded onto a QR code, and where the caregiver can access it, and the book is put in the mail to the child. I've been doing this for about 4 years, and it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. we always refer to the individuals who are incarcerated as residents and see them as people first. So it's a gift. I put a plug in there for that. As far as an update on Idaho goes, since 1957 by hanging, there have been 2 completed executions via legal and lethal injection in Idaho. Keith Wells dropped his appeals and demanded to be executed in 1994. And Paul Ezra Rhodes was executed in November 2011 without any consideration for mitigating factors. We currently have 7 men and 1 woman on death row in Idaho. In February 2024, when SueZann and Abe came out to help us out, there was a very botched execution attempt with Thomas Creech. He was for an hour. They tried to access a line, probably in 8 different places on his body, and it failed. It was rescheduled for the following November, and then a stay was put in place so that legal appeals could be made. At age 75, he's the longest serving person on death row in Idaho. You know, one of these things that does not make sense at all. Yes, he is guilty, but what do we gain by executing a 75-year-old man? We're safe from him if that's needed, and yeah, it's silly, and it costs a lot of money. As with other states, Idaho has had difficulty obtaining drugs for lethal injection. There was a bill signed into law in 2022 that said that Idaho officials cannot disclose how or where drugs have been obtained. And I think the last time there was obtaining drugs, it was a back alley pass of drugs from the cellar to IDOC, Idaho Department of Corrections. Governor Brad Little signed a bill in 2023 authorizing execution by the firing squad. And last year, he signed another law that says that death by firing squad is our first line. So the default is by the firing squad. This last year, they've been working on retrofitting the execution chamber for these firing squad events. This law goes in effect tomorrow, July 1st. So we anticipate that it will not be long before there are warrants, probably for 2 different men on death row who, again, are quite elderly and not in good health. What's the point? Again, my husband and I have been working with Abe and SueZann and Randy the last couple of years on abolition efforts in Idaho, including petition delivery to the Capitol, the vigil for Mr. Creech, and a peaceful protest outside of Cateruma, the engineering firm that has been involved in the retrofitting of the execution chamber. Our turnout was modest, about 18 to 20 people, but it did reflect a cross-section of our community, which was a good thing. And since that time, I have learned more about our unique history of opposition to the death penalty in Idaho. My husband and I met about a week ago with Henry and Kathy Kruer, who did work for a long time in Idaho, starting probably in the early 90s, opposing the death penalty. In 2011, I was looking at they gave me a whole binder of articles and pictures that go back and document what was happening during that time period. And there's a 2011 article in the paper talking about how at that point, they had been holding vigils almost every Wednesday near the state capitol for an hour between 12 and 1, opposing the death penalty. And I was checked, and it sounds like they went on for 3 or 4 years after that. But that's great dedication, and it was done in conjunction with some other things that they felt strongly about, including things like labor rights and the establishment of the Corpus Christi Day House in Boise. So lots of good work. Delightful couple, and we really loved meeting them. Let's see. Yeah, where I am here. There were also a couple of events that happened on Good Fridays, and it was nice to see that the Catholic bishop at the time, Michael Driscoll, the Episcopal Bishop Harry Bainbridge, and legislator David Bader were speakers at these events, and participants were invited to sign a declaration of life. And in that declaration, they're stating their opposition to the death penalty, but also by their signature stating that if they should ever be murdered, they would not want the perpetrator to be killed in their names. Author and Mennonite Gard Hanks was also involved in this group. They called it Idahoans Against the Death Penalty, but I think it was also known as Idahoans for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. And one of their earliest actions was to propose a bill in 1991, 1992, opposing to prevent the state from executing individuals who are cognitively delayed. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but we do have the federal law that says the same thing right now. Let's see. So many of the people that were engaged in the work at that time are advanced in years or have died. And that's one of the reasons that it has kind of fizzled out. We don't have a lot of experience organizing, but I do see two important focuses. One is the immediate, with this law going into effect and likely upcoming executions to be scheduled, that we need to raise public awareness and public action against those vocally. But the other more long-term one is building a core of people, again, who hold these values dear and can spread that to the rest of the community and build it up again.
Yeah.
When's the last time they gave someone the death penalty in Idaho? Since you only have 7 on.
I don't know when the last time was that yes, I do. Lori Daybell is on death row, and I think she was the last one.
Years ago.
But like with Kohlberger, there was a plea out on that one, so he's life without parole.
What year was that one?
That one, just a year or two ago. That's very recent. Yeah, that was the murder of the 4 college students at at U of I. Yeah. That's been since we've been in Idaho, and we've been there 6 years now.
Why'd you come back to the Fast and Vigil?
I love it at the Fast and Vigil. I love being with like-minded people, meeting new people from different parts of the country. It's great, and to be part of the democratic process.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. Up next, whether she likes it or not, is Jasmine Hall. This is what I have on her. She's a 2025 graduate from the University of Maryland. She did advanced social justice causes through an Orthodox Jewish lens here in DC. She's an advocate and a leadership program coordinated at the, excuse my language, Yuri El Tazir. Not even close, and you will help me out. Thank you. And I'm going to let her just tell us a little bit more about that and how to properly pronounce that. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. No worries on the pronunciation. It is Hebrew, so we don't hold you accountable for that. It's pronounced Uri Litzedek. But hello, everybody. My name is Jasmine Hall, and I stand before you today as a member of the Orthodox Jewish community. I am joined by many people of faiths and various backgrounds in a shared act of reflection and moral courage. I am also here to represent my organization for this important cause. Uri Litzedek is a Jewish social justice nonprofit committed to helping the stranger and the vulnerable. We emphasize that religious values require us to stand up for others and pursue justice for those both within and outside our own communities. We gather here together because human life is sacred. In Judaism, there is the belief that every human being is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. This teaching is not reserved for the righteous, the successful, or even the innocent. It applies to every person. It applies even when someone has committed a terrible crime. It applies even when we are angry, when we are mourning, even when our grief is profound. The Torah teaches us that human life possesses this invaluable divine imprint. That principle is the foundation of Jewish ethics and thereby Jewish law. It is why we feed the hungry, visit the sick, comfort the mourner, and pursue justice in every facet of life. It is also why many of us believe that the death penalty must end. Some people are surprised to hear a Jew speaking against capital punishment. After all, the Torah does contain provisions for it. But Jewish tradition is not simply a reading of biblical verses in isolation. Jewish law is a living conversation that stretches from the ancient text and into our own generation. And when we look at that tradition honestly, we find something remarkable. The rabbis of the Talmud placed such strict limits on the laws of the death penalty that they made executions nearly impossible. They demanded extraordinarily reliable evidence, required multiple eyewitnesses, scrutinized testimony with immense care. They sought every possible reason to acquit rather than condemn. The Talmud records a famous teaching. A court that executed even once in 70 years was considered destructive. Famed commentators Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva went even further, declaring that if they had served on such a court, not a single person would be executed even once. These were not people who were soft on crime. They were not indifferent to victims. They were among the greatest legal and moral minds in Jewish history. Their message was simple. When a punishment is irreversible, the standard of certainty must be almost impossibly high. They understood that human beings make mistakes. Judges make mistakes, jurors make mistakes, witnesses make mistakes, prosecutors make mistakes, entire systems make mistakes. And when the punishment is death, there is no appeal after that fact. There are no second chances. The possibility of executing even one innocent person should shake us to our core. Jewish law has long recognized that protecting innocent life must be a paramount concern. The rabbis feared a legal system that could take a life based on incomplete knowledge or human error. They knew that certainty is often elusive and that humility is a requirement when dealing with matters of life and death. That concern is not theoretical. We know that wrongful convictions occur. We know that people have been exonerated after spending years on death row. We know that access to skilled legal representation often depends on wealth and privilege. We know that race and economic status can influence outcomes within the criminal justice system. These realities challenge the very notion that the death penalty can be administered fairly and consistently. We are taught repeatedly that justice must not favor the powerful over the vulnerable. We are commanded to care for the stranger, the widow, the orphan, the people most likely to be overlooked or mistreated by society. When a punishment falls disproportionately on those who lack resources, when the quality of a defense depends on economic circumstances, when racial disparities persist, we are obligated to ask difficult questions. Not because we reject justice, but because we seek true justice. When we execute someone, we declare that person's story over. We are saying that redemption is irrelevant, that transformation no longer matters. But our values tell a different story. There also remains the possibility of repairing what can be repaired, of acknowledging wrongdoing, of seeking forgiveness, of contributing in meaningful ways, even from within the constraints of punishment. The death penalty puts an end to all of that possibility. I also want to acknowledge the victims of violent crime and their families, many of whom are present today. Jewish values require us to stand with victims, to hear their pain, to support their healing, to hold offenders accountable, and to pursue safety for our communities. Nothing about ending the death penalty leads us to forget those victims. The question is not whether justice matters. The question is what true justice looks like. We are challenged to imagine a justice system rooted not in vengeance, but in dignity. Not in retribution alone, but in responsibility. This vision is restorative justice, a commitment to accountability, healing, community safety, and humanity. It seeks to address harm without reproducing violence. It seeks to protect life and love rather than take it. It seeks a future that honors both justice and mercy. The prophet Micah asked us what God requires of us. It says to pursue justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. Notice that justice and mercy are not opposites. In Jewish thought, they belong together. Justice without mercy can become cruelty. Mercy without justice can become indifference. The challenge is to hold both in our hearts. As we stand here today, fasting and keeping vigil, we affirm that every life possesses dignity. We affirm that the power of the state must be restrained when human life is at stake. We affirm that the possibility of error, the reality of inequality, and the sacredness of every person compel us to reject the death penalty. More than 100 rabbis from across the Jewish spectrum came together to make this case nearly a decade ago. They reminded our nation that while Jewish tradition recognizes the gravity of serious crime, it also places extraordinary barriers before the taking of human life. They called for an end to capital punishment and for a commitment to more just and restorative vision of society. Today we continue that call. We do so as Jews, we do so as people of faith, and we do so as people of conscience. And we do so because we believe that the measure of a society is not only how it responds to innocence, but how it responds to guilt. This conviction is at the heart of Uri Litzedek's work. Whether we are advocating for fair treatment of workers, expanding access to food and other basic needs, or speaking out on issues like capital punishment, we seek to bring the timeless values of faith into today's moral challenges. We believe that justice and compassion are inseparable obligations, not competing ideals. That is why we stand here today. May we build a society that protects the vulnerable, pursue justice with both wisdom and mercy, and may we have the courage to preserve life. Thank you so much.
Rabbi Shmuley knows you're here.
Yes, my boss, Rabbi Shmuley, the founder and president of Uri Litzedek, is also sending his well wishes.
He's on the advisory committee of Death Penalty Action. And, thank you. Rabbi Shmuley Yanklowitz is also on the board of advisors of Death Penalty Action. And you can find on our webpage a whole 10-minute treatise about this, which so we're just so grateful that you came and he sent you, and please tell him Abe and Scott and all of us send our greetings and our thanks.
That was awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask the people behind me, does anyone need to be switched out? If you could raise your hand. I do have one switch out coming soon. Is there anyone else who needs a respite?
Okay. All good.
Awesome. Okay, the next person is my roomie. You may know her as the woman who cuts your hair every year. Where is she, SueZann? There you are. I love this woman. From day one, when I first got here, every single year I learned something from her. We're talking about love. It's in that heart. And this woman here has got so much love. There is no further introduction that needs to be done for this woman. A member of Journey of Hope. Get your Kleenexes out. SueZann Bosler. Come on up, SueZann.
So I guess I am speaking tonight. Okay. Gosh, everybody has said so much about the things that I would like to talk about that I don't have to talk about it as much. But I wanted to start off by speaking about Journey of Hope, which Mark Jordan and everybody has spoken about a little bit. Continuation of what was said. I'm a co-founder of Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing. And like they said, in 1993, we kind of started it up, and here it is. We're going to continue going on as much as we have. We have people like me that's a victim that are on Journey of Hope that we welcomed. And we finally realized quickly, actually, that we're not just the only victims. When we were meeting and seeing and talking to people that were executed, that we saw that there's more victims that are going to be brought onto our victimization already. So we welcome any story because we feel that they are just as important as we are. So we do that for everybody around the world. I just also wanted to briefly say about over here. I just wanted to start off by reading those.
SueZann?
Thank you. That's so generous.
Okay.
Okay, so I just was writing down a couple things about forgiveness because it was on my mind, and it's not perfect, but listen to the words. When I 100% forgive, I will no longer keep score. Forgiveness is free. Forgiveness gives us freedom. Forgiveness is a gift to ourselves. We own the right to forgive. Forgiveness is always available. Forgiveness has no timeline. Forgiveness is surrendering to peace. Forgiveness is for every human being on this earth, or death row, or otherwise. Forgiveness is our soul's right to live again. Forgiveness gave me my life back. Forgiveness liberated me to save James Bernard Campbell's life. Forgiveness is my best friend. Sorry about that.
Love you.
So I could tell you so much. There's a big, long story and details, but I'm going to try to stay with the basics, which a lot of you have already heard, and some have heard short stories, and some have not at all. So I wanted to first start off by showing you a picture of my father. This was taken a couple months before he passed away. And I look at it all the time to see his beautiful face of love that he taught me. On December 22nd, 1986, was a day that changed my life. Not in the way I wanted, but it was a learning experience, that's for sure. We lived in the parsonage next to the church. Everybody knows what a parsonage is, right? So everybody knows I'm a PK, right? Okay. So, well, now they do. So we always had people coming to our house for food, clothing, counseling, help, or whatever they asked for. We made sure that we would give them. So when there was a doorbell ringing, it was always interesting because we thought, is it one of our regulars or is it someone new? So when I heard the doorbell ring, my dad went to the door and opened the door. As soon as he opened the door, I heard him making strange noises. I went out running into the hallway, and I saw my dad holding onto the kitchen doorway with a man stabbing him with a knife. I involuntarily screamed, and the guy heard me. So my dad fell down on his hands and knees, and he turned around and was going to stab me in the front. So I turned, and he stabbed me 3 times in the back, and I went down. Turned around again, and quickly, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, stabbed my dad about 24 times. So I got up. He put his hand on my shoulder here, and I backed into the living room. I'm looking into his eyes. He's holding the knife by his head. and I see the knife come to my face. So I turned and it embedded into my head here twice. And I went down. I still can't explain it till today, is my human instinct. I held my breath to pretend I was dead because I could hear him above me, behind me, breathing hard and all that work that he has just done. And I could hear him watching me. So I must have somehow convinced him. So he left and he went to my bedroom first. When I heard my bedroom door open, I opened my eyes. My dad had crawled to the front door and collapsed. And we had a bamboo sofa, so I could see him very clearly, gasping for breath, and each breath he took was harder than the last one. So I'm thinking, I'm praying to God, because these were the shortest prayers I've ever done in my life. But I was asking myself, please tell me this is a nightmare. But it wasn't a nightmare when I saw my dad trying to breathe, or I could feel the warm pool of blood coming across my face from my head. I had to keep pretending I was dead. Several times that he might have seen me, he one time threw an armchair across on top of me, and he's done other things too, but I was just waiting for him to leave because I had to convince myself my dad's not dead. My dad's not dead. Focus on being alive, to go to the phone, to get help. The man finally left, but he pissed me off because he pulled the door so hard that it hit my dad's body. I went to the phone, and the first phone call made me sound like a prank phone caller. So I had to angrily hang up and call back again because I needed to hear the 5 words. Help is on the way. So I could hang up, run back to my dad. And hopefully, if he's going to die, I didn't want him to die on that cold terrazzo floor by himself. I wanted him to die in my arms so I could tell him the last time I love him. But things don't always go our way. Don't always go our way. When the police officer, I had to open, the second operator kept me online, and I sat down and I was just holding my head and rocking. And I saw the policeman go by the door, and I had to go up and unlock the door and come down. When I saw him come in, he was pulling out his gun because he didn't know if he was still there. But when he came in, I passed out. I blacked out. Woke up in the ambulance, blacked out again. Woke up in the helicopter, blacked out again, and woke up in the ICU room, and a detective is standing right there asking me questions because they didn't think I was going to make it. I finally passed out, blacked out, and they had to take me into surgery and take out hundreds of pieces of skull and 2 pieces of my speech and memory. You could tell about my speech that it's not doing very perfectly here. But after that, instead of us going up to my family in Indiana, because my sister just had a baby, my dad never got to see her. They came down to see if we were alive. They came straight from the airport. And when I heard my mom's voice, first thing I said to her was Merry Christmas. But it's after that, only thing I said was, is my dad alive? Is my dad alive? Is my dad alive for 1 week? And everybody said yes. You know how sometimes we have these human instincts? Towards the end of the week, my stomach started getting like, something's not right. And when I see my mom, my 2 sisters, doctor, nurse, and at the end there was a minister, I knew something wasn't right. So when my mom told me that my dad wasn't alive anymore, I lost it. I tried to tear out all the tubes that were in me. So they had to sedate me because I didn't want to live anymore. And they had to take me to a solitary room. And after that, I couldn't ask that question anymore. He was alive. I had to think about, what do I talk about now? What do I ask now? I didn't even know who I was. I was lost. But I remember when we had a visitation from some people from our church, Church of the Brethren, my dad was a minister of. Right before he left, he asked me, "SueZann, do you forgive him?" And I said immediately, yes. But after they left, I'm thinking to myself, I said the words, but why am I not feeling it? It took me 5.5 years to forgive him. I was not happy with this person at all. I saw everything that he did right in front of my face. I was not happy with him at all. I did not like him. I also had to go through the next 10.5 years to save his life, which I didn't want to do. So first of all, I did it for my father. My father's voice. I was my father's voice. Because 8 years before this happened, my dad told me, "SueZann, if there's anybody, if anybody is going to murder or kill me, I would still not want that person to get the death penalty." And boy, did that come to me and go, wow, pretty intense. It was pretty intense, let me tell you. So I did it first for my dad. And then on the first or second appeal, when they didn't bring the jurors in yet, I pointed to him, I said, "James Burke Campbell, I forgive you. Whether you accept it or not, I forgive you." And it was the last time that I was down. I felt like a new woman. I felt like a new person, that I'm back again. SueZann is back. I had more energy and power to save this man's life. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. So on June 13th, 1997, I was able to get him from death penalty that he was given 3 times to 4 consecutive life sentences. So the one thing I did not tell you was I was telling them from the beginning, the prosecutor, that I did not want the death penalty. But I didn't learn until later he was going, "Okay, SueZann, okay, SueZann, okay." So, and then it gave him the death penalty, gave him the death penalty, gave him the death penalty. And so I thought, okay, on the third one, I became friends with the head detective on my case, and he found a lawyer that was a lawyer and a minister that helped me on that last appeal. Before I testified, the judge told me that I was not allowed to say my opinion about the death penalty. That's what I almost did that too. Yeah, because I couldn't believe. I thought, am I in America? Am I in America? Because everybody who wants the death penalty was allowed to talk and say it in court. I'm thinking of stuff. Okay, now what do I do? But she taught me, you're not supposed to have emotion because you don't want the jurors to see emotion. You can't cooperate with the lawyer because he gets answers out of you that he wants them to hear for the death penalty. So I had to be a new person on that stand. So before I testified, like I said, the judge chose me and said that I wasn't allowed to say my opinion, right? So the first question the prosecutor asked me, your name, your address, and your occupation. I'm thinking, okay. And I'm not looking at him for him to control me. I'm looking at the jurors. I'm saying my name, my address, and I said, "I'm a hairdresser and I work to abolish the death penalty." They didn't clap that much there. It was kind of like, if you see it on 48 Hours, he kind of goes, okay. And then he asked me 2 more questions to pretend to the jurors that everything's going smoothly. Sent the jurors out, sidebar with the judge, and that was different after that. Because the judge turned to me and said, "SueZann, if you say your opinion about the death penalty again in this courtroom, I'll put you in jail for 6 months and fine you." Which I wasn't expecting, but it did not stop me. You'll see on 48 Hours that I cried because I wasn't expecting it, but it did not stop me on June 13, 1997 to save his life. So the other thing is that I can end with a little bit is I am also blessed with the people that I already know in this group and the new people that we see each year. It's beautiful and wonderful and fabulous to see beautiful new faces. I'm just going to show you this real quick. This is me after the first surgery. I had 2 surgeries because they had to take this whole side out, and I had to wear a plastic helmet for 8 months because there was no skull here. So that was an interesting experience in itself too. I think a lot of people know that what I say a lot when I speak is my dad's favorite hymn was, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." But I always add, it's great to begin with all of us. Art. My friend is going to help me sing because I'm not.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our creator, children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment, live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
I'm going to give SueZann a second or two to
I'm good.
just think about
You
love
are.
and peace in this room. Um, she's such a special person. I love her so much. And when she cries, I feel it. Does anyone have any questions for SueZann?
Or comments.
Comments?
Or remind me what I forgot to say.
No. Susanna? Oh, go ahead. What's your question?
So I wonder, you talked about being with your sister and your mom. So what were their reactions to you and your dad's forgiveness? What was the big thing?
Repeat the question, please. Okay, the question was, with this family dynamic, what were the opinions of our other family members, your mom, your sister, when this happened, when this tragedy happened?
That's a good question. That was an interesting experience because I remember my sisters or somebody in my family telling me, because they were all up, everybody except me and dad were up to see the baby. So they were all there. And when they had called my brother-in-law that worked at a company late at night to tell him what happened. And it took him hours before he was able to go home and tell them. But and when he came in the house, my sister said she thought that it was one of his family members that was killed or died. And so they said, okay, we got to be strong for him. And then he goes, also, he didn't know what to say. So he said, everybody in the living room, everybody hold hands. And then when he told them, my little sister went back out of the circle and started rocking and crying. And so they had definitely interesting experiences. Each one of them has. It was hard for them when they came to visit me because they're grieving too, and they had to stay happy for me or try to get me going to that first week that I didn't know either, because the doctors told them if you tell her, she could die. So they kept that to keep me alive. But each one does have an interesting experience. And of course, it's me, the one that speaks a lot. is the one that is the one that says the story. They really don't want to talk about it anymore. They're kind of over or through it, which I understand. But they support me kind of in backward way that what I do and being able to speak around the world. Thank you for that question.
What about forgiveness? Are they forgiving?
Oh, that's another interesting thing I could tell you about. Is my grandmother, my dad's mother, taught my dad about the death penalty. My dad taught me. And when her son, my dad, was killed, I didn't find out until she died that she had her church, when she lived in the Florida Keys, write letters to the judge to give him the death penalty. So that was an interesting experience for me, because the first judge for the guilty phase, he let her and me get up to speak before the jurors gave their sentence. And so my grandmother gets up before me and says, I'm against the death penalty, judge, but do what you got to do.
Oh,
And I'm sitting there going, like, did I hear her correctly? Did I hear this correctly? And she comes and sits down, and I do my thing up against the death penalty. But it was a learning experience for me. I mean, she would call her family, her church, and people, as many people as she could, to write to the judge for the death penalty. So did I answer my question a little bit?
well, the forgiveness.
Oh, well, see, that's what I went around the world speaking with all of these groups. I would come home and go to her and tell her the exciting people I met and the wonderful people I met and talked to. And she would always go, hmm. And I always wondered, I never really thought, why is she not, supporting me until after that? But the forgiveness is the one that was the hardest of all, of anything that happened to me in that whole situation. And the only unfortunate part, since I live in South Florida, is that when I get into my car to drive, I become bipolar. So I have to do a lot of forgiveness for myself there in that sense. So any comments or questions or?
I just want to say I appreciate how you ground our movement, and that it's important to center your stories and the impact. And when we came to the night to break the fast, I immediately noticed how welcoming you were, and you made me and my wife feel so welcomed. And it's just hearing your testimony, I realized that's who you are. Welcoming, compassionate, grounded. And I just want to specifically acknowledge that, how wonderful that is in movement spaces. And I want to thank you.
You are all of those things.
So what we're going to do through Journey of Hope and all the groups that we're with is I believe that since I survived, this is my job, not my job. This is why I'm still here, until I take my last breath. I am going to try with Abe and everybody else to abolish the death penalty.
Thank you, SueZann. Yet another person with a lot of love and a big heart. Since he was up here already, I'm going to make him come back again. Art. I don't know Art very well, because I have been in the movement all along. But man, you can tell that loving heart that he has. He doesn't have a mean bone in his body. I love this man, not only for just his love, but he's got talent, man. He can sing. He's an author as well, aren't you? You're just a great humanitarian with that big heart that welcomes everybody. And I want to personally thank you for being who you are. You're beautiful.
We have a hand for our great MC. Amazing. First, let's give a round of applause to Scott and Abe and the team for hosting us and pulling us together once again. So we've heard some amazing testimonies, and I've known George and SueZann and Jennifer way back. I haven't seen her in a long time.
Way back.
But friends, we're participating in a miracle, really. All of us have been touched by God's amazing grace to help each other through the pain, the violence, and the suffering of murder. And I want to just give thanks to God for this amazing grace that's at work here in this community and in the founding of the Journey of Hope and in the great work of Death Penalty Action, Catholic Mobilizing Network, Amnesty International, the Death Penalty Information Center, and all the groups that are represented here. Thank you. Let's give everybody a round of applause for this heroic and heroic work. You know, there's a line in Mark's Gospel which says, all things are possible for the one who believes and for the one who has faith. And isn't that true? I mean, what have we witnessed here this evening? You know, people who have gone through unspeakable tragedies and are able to share their pain, the loss of their loved ones, and help us all to see with new eyes how critical, how important it is to end killing. We live in a time where killing, war, genocide has been normalized. And what a tragedy. But back to that line. All things are possible for the one who has faith, the one who believes. And this is a group of believers. People who believe in life, love, hope, nonviolence, community, and are acting on it to make state-sanctioned murder one day be abolished. With God, all things are possible. I believe that. So in 1996, I get a call to Dorothy Day Catholic Worker, not too far from here in the Petworth neighborhood. And the call is from Brother Abe here, saying, can the Catholic Worker prepare a meal for people who are been fasting for 4 days outside the Supreme Court in the death penalty? And I said, yes, we can do that. That's what we do. We offer hospitality. We do our best to try to feed those who are hungry. And we work for peace and justice and nonviolence. And sure, we'll prepare the meal. I said, what time is the meal? Midnight. Have you ever gotten a call? I mean, there's that knock at midnight, right? You know, are you going to prepare the meal? And so that was really my introduction into this community. And then a year later, I was invited to participate in the first resistance action here on these steps of the unsupreme court. And the reason I say unsupreme is because there's nothing supreme about a court that sanctions killing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Amen?
Amen.
And so 18 of us went up to the higher steps there, held a banner, 30-foot long banner saying stop executions. And we were all arrested, of course. And I got a chance to spend some time with some of our murder victim family members. And I was deeply, deeply moved. And then we went to trial. And then I hear some of the testimony on the stand from our friends who were arrested, who were murder victim family members, including Marietta Yeager, as you heard, one of the co-founders of the Journey of Hope. And I said to myself, I said, boy, I don't know if I had that kind of faith and courage to do what she's done. Her 7-year-old daughter was kidnapped and murdered. And here's Marietta telling her story and why the death penalty needs to be abolished. And so 2 years later, September 20th, 1999, my younger brother Paul, who was the associate director of the Mercy Housing and Shelter Program in Hartford, Connecticut, was leaving work, and he was approached by a man who often frequented the soup kitchen and shelter. His name was Dennis Sutar, and Dennis repeatedly stabbed my brother, and shortly thereafter, Paul died. I want to pass around some pictures. This was front page news. It was, some of the stories of the murder victim families also includes, dealing with the media almost immediately when you're facing this unspeakable trauma. And so such was the case with my family. My brother was very well known in the community. He was referred on TV as Mr. Holidays because every holiday time he would prepare a feast for the people at the shelter. And so we got word of Paul's murder, and immediately, you feel this sense of shock, disbelief, a sorrow that defies words. And what I had to do was to turn to my faith and say, what would God have me do in this moment? And then I read the words of Jesus. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Forgive and you will be forgiven. And then, we hear these scripture passages, and we've been taught a lot of things, but what it comes down to is, what do you really believe? What do you really believe? And so I look at Jesus, who is giving these instructions, these commandments, and when he's being given the death penalty of his day, when he's being crucified, he's asking God to forgive those who are murdering him, thereby putting into practice that seemingly impossible command to love your enemies. So here's Jesus on the cross, showing us how to live and die, and inaugurating a new era, a new history for humanity, by putting into practice that commandment to love your enemies. And so by God's amazing grace, and through the prayers and support of many people in our community here and sisters and brothers around the country. During my brother's funeral, we were able to ask people to show mercy and compassion for Dennis Sutar. Right after my brother was killed, Catholic newspaper, we had a friend who was a reporter there. She called and asked my mother, "How do you feel about the man who killed your son?" And she said to the reporter, "What he did was a terrible thing, but God forgive him. He didn't know what he was doing." Several weeks after the funeral, my mother and I had a chance to meet with members of Dennis's family. And there we discovered how this is a double tragedy. Of course, my family is suffering deeply from this tragic loss. But then we met Dennis's sister-in-law, who was a nurse at the hospital where I was born. And then it turns out she went to the same high school. My older brother's a teacher. And we began to learn about who Dennis was. And we were able to pray together. We went to Mass together. And come to find out, Dennis was estranged from his family, suffered from severe paranoid schizophrenia. He had been hospitalized 3 times and was released onto the streets. He was clearly a threat to himself and to others. 6 months before this happened, this tragedy happened, the state of Connecticut cut funding for the mentally ill, homeless, and poor. And so Dennis had no support system, after he was released. And it resulted in the death of my brother. Dennis was deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial. Had he been deemed competent and went to trial, he could have faced the death penalty in Connecticut at that time. And so he was given effectively a life sentence, and he's now in a Connecticut prison hospital. And I ask you to please join me in praying for him, for his healing. And that he can experience God's forgiving love. As I was going through this tragedy, I remembered my friends who I met on a journey of hope. I had a chance to call Bill and George and Marietta, and they were a great support to me. Thank you, George. Brother Bill Paulke has been mentioned here tonight. And I want to share with you what should be a bestseller, Bill's book, The Journey of Hope. And if you look carefully at the Journey of Hope bus, George and I were talking about it earlier. They had a bus that would break down frequently. I had a chance to ride on it once.
Not my fault.
But here's George sticking his head out, Bill, and Bud Welch. Can you pass this around?
Bud Welch, Oklahoma City bombing.
Bud Welch was the father of Julie, who was killed in the Oklahoma City bombing, and has become a leader worldwide to abolish the death penalty. So the friends that I mentioned and many others, you know, were tremendous support to me, as well as at the Catholic Worker and so many members of our extended communities that we're part of. And you know, I tell people all the time, you know, we live in a time where every single person is a potential victim of violence, any one of us. And the challenge before us is how can we create a culture of nonviolence? Pope Leo mentioned in his recent encyclical of creating a civilization of love. And love has been brought up a lot tonight. And our co-founder of the Catholic Worker, Dorothy Day, would say the only solution is love to all our problems that we face. Dr. King was a victim of the death penalty. He said that capital punishment is society's final assertion that it will not forgive. And he went on to say that love, even for enemies, is the key to the solution of the problems of our world. Amen, Dr. King? Amen. Archbishop Desmond Tutu wrote a book based on his experience in South Africa and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And his message is, there's no future without forgiveness. Thank you, SueZann, for leading us in that meditation earlier. And so I pray for the strength to love every day. I fail often. But this is our communal task. And if we're to break the cycle of violence in our culture and in our world, Gandhi said, violence ends where love begins. And so together, it's possible. And the stories that you've heard throughout these last several days, it's possible. You know, you have death row exonerees. Lamont and Shuja speaking last night. They've been to hell and back, and they're living to tell their story about how they survived being executed. Thanks be to God for the death row exonerees. They're similar to the torture survivors who were, this past month of June, you know, we're celebrating Torture Survivors Month. And I was with some of them recently, and they too are living testaments to the resurrection hope of the gospel. And so I want to end by sharing with you a couple things. One is Brother Bill Pelkey introduced many of us to the community of Sant'Egidio in Italy. And some of us have had the opportunity to go and speak in different countries where the Sant'Egidio community is. And every year they have a campaign called Cities for Life, a campaign to abolish the death penalty worldwide. And this is how the community of Sant'Egidio got involved. They read a letter from a brother on death row named Dominique Green, who was wrongfully convicted on Texas death row. And he was part of a robbery, but not part of the murder that happened. And so he was sentenced to death. And so the community of Sant'Egidio befriended him. They sent a couple of people to visit him on death row. They made a film about his life. And then they got many people involved, including Sister Helen Prejean and a brother named Tom Cahill, the great writer. And Tom ended up writing a book about Dominique Green called A Saint on Death Row. I'll pass it around. And so the first time I was invited to Italy was 2007, and I arrive, and my friend who's hosting me says, "Okay, you're gonna go back to my place and get some rest, and you got a big itinerary for you. Community of Sant'Egidio, George, and others. SueZann, do 2 or 3 speaking engagements a day, anywhere in the country. We're constantly on the move." So anyway, she's saying you need a little rest, and I said, "Well, what are you doing today?" She says, "Well, I'm going to a dedication ceremony at this little park in a poor section of Rome, and it's being dedicated to Dominique Green." And I said, "Who's Dominique Green?" I had no idea who he was, because at that time there were so many executions. You just say, "Oh, it's another execution taking place in Texas," but I didn't know anything about Dominique Green. And so I said, "I want to go." So I go to the ceremony, and I'm blown away by it. I mean, in Rome, Italy, they're honoring a poor black brother who was wrongfully convicted, murdered by the state of Texas. And they took the time to care. I mean, it was extraordinary. Where people in the United States, I mean, some people were intervening on his behalf, but he was still executed. So the story doesn't end there. Dominique Green's last wishes were that he be buried with the community of Sant'Egidio in Rome. And the great David Atwood of Texas was able to get Dominique's ashes and take them to Rome. And I visited the shelter where his ashes are interred in Rome. Dominique Green presenting.
Presented.
I have one last thing and then a quote. Our brother, Reverend Dr. Jack Sullivan, who many of us know, who's been here many, many times, a great abolitionist from Ohio. His sister was killed in an unsolved murder. He wanted to send greetings to everybody here. He's in Paris attending a World Congress against the death penalty. So he can't be here in person, but thanks be to God for Jack. Might be tuning in. And so I'd like to close with these words of Troy Davis. How many people here don't know about Troy Davis? Could you raise your hand? There's some people who don't know. Troy was a African American who was convicted of murder and sentenced to death in Georgia, despite evidence of his innocence, faced 3 execution dates, and spent over 20 years on death row before the state of Georgia finally executed him on September 20th, 2011. September 21st, 2011. In a case that received worldwide attention, with numerous officials calling for his life to be spared, Troy maintained his innocence until the end, and he offered these inspiring words to all who supported him shortly before his execution. He said, "Thank you, and remember, I am in a place where execution can only destroy your physical form, but because of my faith in God, my family, and all of you, I have been spiritually free for some time. And no matter what happens in the days and weeks to come, this movement to end the death penalty, to seek true justice, to expose a system that fails to protect the innocent must be accelerated. There are so many more Troy Davises. We need to dismantle this unjust system, city by city, state by state, and country by country. And I'd just like to digress here for a second and say the community of Sant'Egidio has been working worldwide to abolish the death penalty. And they remind us there are 140 countries that no longer have it. And there are over 20,000 people on death row right now worldwide. And so we can't let up. Troy's words speak very clearly to this. Troy ends by saying, I can't wait to stand with you, no matter if it is in a physical or spiritual form. And then later he was executed. And so Troy Davis, presente.
Presente.
Friends, let us continue to keep our eyes on the prize and keep doing all that we can to create the beloved community and to end state-sanctioned killing everywhere. Thank you.
Got questions? Questions for Art?
He answered them all.
I beg your pardon?
He answered all the questions.
He did, didn't he? My next presenter, I want to have Randy. Where are you, Randy?
Right here.
Randy? There he is.
Oh.
Randy, I just got to know him probably maybe my second time around up here. Another guy who's gone through so much, and another guy who's willing to give you your shirt off his back to you. I love you, Randy. We're here to support you. Remember, we're here for your love, giving you love.
Welcome. My name's Randy and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, wrong meeting. Right people though. My name's Randy Gardner from Salt Lake City, Utah. I got involved with the anti-death penalty movement June 18th, 2010, when the state of Utah executed my little brother, Ronnie Lee Gardner, by firing squad. So shortly after his execution, he was actually on death row for 25 years. He was actually locked up in the system since he was 10 years old. So something we always say is the state raised my brother and they executed him. What parent would do that to their own kid? But that's how we felt. So after he was executed, I was lost, of course. You know, it came really quick. He had a few execution dates and they never even came close. 25 years later, this one actually came to be. Within a 3-month period, they executed my little brother by firing squad. I was not at his execution. It was the plan for me to be if it ever happened. He wanted me to be at his execution. Towards the end, when he seen it coming close, he denied me access to it. I'm kind of pissed at him for that. I think I didn't know I was going to end up being an abolitionist. I didn't even know what anti-death penalty was. I didn't think nobody in the world even done this stuff. So I was very naive about it. Yes, so they executed him. I didn't see it. After they did the autopsy on him, the next day, it was classified as a judicial homicide. So it was a murder, state-sanctioned murder. Things got worse. They took him to where he was going to be cremated. He didn't want me to see that either. Apparently, he didn't tell the crematory that we weren't supposed to see him. And I'm to this day, I'm glad that the guy wanted us to spend time with Ronnie and allowed us to do that. It was myself and Ronnie, myself and Ronnie's daughter and his son, Daniel and Brandi, and Ronnie's the mother of his children, that were viewing Ronnie's body. all we could see was his head, and had the urge, and I needed to, I guess. I wanted to see what his body really looked like, so I sent my niece and the others over there to say, go find some urns, if he's going to be, let me just spend a minute with him. Sure enough, I unzip the black bag that he's in, and I look at his chest, and I see the wounds, and my first thought was, well, there was 5 shooters and 1 blank, so I seen 4 holes. It was plain as day. I thought, well, at least he died quick. He had 4 holes from a 30-30 rifle shot from 30 feet away. So I was at least got closure, I thought. Shortly after that, I was feeling confused. I think it was the beginning of the post-traumatic stress that I have to this day. I was only diagnosed with that 8 years after he was executed. So for the first 8 years, I was dealing with stuff that nobody ever wants to be. It's that club that no one wants to belong to. And I get that right now, that's why I fight it. I don't want people to feel like I felt, my family felt, and Ronnie's kids felt. Ronnie was he was a normal kid. I mean, he was never diagnosed with a mental illness. Like I say, he got put in the state mental hospital in Provo, Utah at the age of 10 because he was skipping school. And it became a lot of skipping school. And what finally happened, he didn't realize this until 25 years later, that he had a learning disability. He diagnosed himself with ADHD. I think he had a little bit of dyslexia. He didn't feel like the other kids that were in school. He was only 2 years younger than me. So my mom, as a loving, caring mom, the only way she knew how to do it is she'd let him miss school. He'd go in the front door and come out the back door all the time. And we taught my mom to love years later. My mom was abused at a very young age. She didn't really know how to be a parent. I believe she had her first kid at 14 years old. And it was by someone that raped her. So that empathy that my mom had for Ronnie was probably not the right thing to do. But anyway, so he spent a couple of years in state mental hospital, and he used to come home on the weekends, and he'd say, "Randy, why am I in this place?" He goes, "I'm in here with adults." He goes, "They're all doing the Thorazine shuffle." I said, "What the heck's the Thorazine shuffle?" Well, Thorazine is where they put people on to make them robotic, and that's what he said. They're just walking like zombies everywhere. And he goes, "There are hardly any kids." And a couple years later, he got out of there. He never did get out of the system though, because he'd already committed another crime at 12 years old. Runaway, shoplifting, sniffing gas, stuff like that. That we were all doing that type of stuff. Like I said, we didn't have very good upbringing from our parents, and God bless their souls. And I've been told, how come you didn't turn out like your brother? Well, the difference was because I didn't have that learning disability there, and he did. I think I have a little bit of one now. I'm getting old. I got to see the autopsy photos of my brother's chest and his bullet wounds. It took me quite a while to even want to get them. I got the first medical report from the medical examiner almost immediately, and they gave me a short version, and the death certificate. But I got to see, 6 months later, I decided to look at these pictures, the autopsy photos. It was brutal. There is no humane way to execute anybody. And the firing squad is one of the worst, and they think you die quicker. My brother, they fired the 4 shots into him. 20 seconds after, his hand was still moving. They thought they were going to have to fire a second round of shots into him, and they were prepared to do that. The doctor come in and pronounced him dead. He was actually they pronounced him dead at 12:17. I still haven't figured out significance, but it was the 1217th person executed in the United States. So I think there's some significance to that. I haven't found it yet. It's been 16 years, but one day I'm going to figure that out. We also had a doctor last year. I'm terrible with names, but he reevaluated the autopsy photos for us, for death penalty action for me. He was a medical room doctor, seen gunshot wounds and everything, but he analyzed the whole autopsy report and the pictures, and he come to the conclusion that my brother was not shot in the heart. They pin a white heart on your chest. Not one of the bullets hit the air of the heart. One of them nicked the heart. The rest of them were here, over here in the side. So we don't know that. That brought up a nightmare for me to think about it. I've already resolved the whole issues and thought at least he was shot in the heart. Well, he wasn't shot in the heart, but I mean, it was gruesome. I've showed a lot of the pictures that I have around, and most people don't want to look at them because they're so bad. And that's before they cleaned him up, and there was blood all over, and they put a blue jumpsuit on him instead of an orange, what he normally wear, and that was to hide the blood. His underwear, I got a picture of his underwear and his socks. I had a reporter do a report one time. She goes, "How come he wore red underwear?" I looked at her and I said, "The blood." She goes, "Oh my gosh!" She stopped the interview, started crying. She goes, "I had no idea that much blood." And I said, "Well, that many holes, that much blood, yeah." But I've been with doing this for 16 years. I started out with a journey of hope from violence to healing. I reached out on the phone, got hold of them. Bill Pelkey, I talked to on the phone. Bill asked me to go to Texas, and he said, "But I won't be there." He says, "But I want you to get an idea because my daughter worked at the airlines, so I got free flight benefits. So big bonus for all these guys. Still do, still got them." So went to Texas, and first people I met was Suju Graham and 3 other exonerees, and I never in the world believed that these guys were exonerated from death row. I knew my brother was guilty. Most people in Utah are guilty. I thought everybody was guilty. I thought they go through the judicial process, and there's no way that they could get this wrong. But so I met 4 of them, and for the first hour or so before I got to know them and calm down, I really thought that Bill Pelkey set me up, and these guys were here to torment me more, and I was scared to death. And that's, again, the PTSD started very quick, but in the end, come to find out, I was on the board of Journey of Hope and Violence to Healing for 8 years. We traveled all over the states, and I'm not a public speaker by no means, and they make me do this. But if I don't do it, then I feel a lot worse. I really do, yeah. And I've tried to take breaks, and at least I'm not on a board of nothing where I don't feel like I have to do it, but I feel like if I don't do it, I'm not doing something wrong, and there's not too many people in my situation that wants to get out there or do this type of stuff, Most of my family members are still scratching their head. You've been doing this 16 years now. I've had my kids tell me, I wish you were as dedicated to us growing up as you would be the death penalty. Breaks my heart. But, and I thought I was a loving. That's why my name is Randy, and I'm an alcoholic. I got almost 3 years sober. and the difference I see, I was a functioning alcoholic. I was self-employed my whole life. I thought I was functioning very well, I'd have been a multi-millionaire if I wouldn't have been partying and drinking, and that, my priority. I do have 5 kids. I've got 5 grandkids, and my granddaughter just FaceTimed me the other day, and she goes, "Grandpa, guess what?" I said, "What?" She goes, "I'm gonna have a baby." So I'm gonna be a great grandpa here, and I'm pretty excited about that. Dude, I might live to be a great grandpa. So, again, I want to thank everybody for coming out. This is a cool event. I've been here more than not out of the 16 years. I've missed a few, but I love it when I come out here. The people are just like family. It's good to see George here. I seen George last year. I mean, they were all involved. SueZann Bosler, Abe, Death Penalty Action is a great organization. Terry Steinberg, I see her out there. I probably missed lots of you guys, but these are the ones I've become so close to over the years. And I just love doing this kind of work. I love to hate it or hate to love it, but I'm going to keep coming back. Thank you.
Hey, question. Question.
Thought I was off the hook here.
Yeah, no, I want to know, did you ever get to work with Gary Gogger, who is our Illinois exoneree? Did
No, but I haven't worked with too many exonerees. Derek Jameson, Suja, Juan Melendez.
Right.
But
Never, you didn't get to meet Gary. I want to make sure you guys meet.
you should do that.
Thank you. Thanks again. And last up for the evening, I want to invite up here Mary Beaudoin. Mary is with volunteers chair of the death penalty abolition and restorative justice issue team for the Marianist Social Justice Collaboration. She also works as director of religious education on St. Raphael Catholic Church in Rockville, Maryland. And please, warm welcome from Mary.
Thank you. It's actually, I'm in the right spot. I actually retired 1 year ago today, so
Yay!
1 year retired from the religious education. So I just thankful for being here and thanks for hearing all these stories. I'm honored to be here because my story is just that I'm a supporter of all of them who've been through so much. So my name is Mary Beaudoin, and I'm, as you just heard, I serve as the chair of the Death Penalty Abolition and Restorative Justice team, which is part of the Marianist Social Justice Collaborative, or MSJC. MSJC began in 1998 with the goal of promoting education and action for social justice within the Marianist family, which I will describe in a moment. The first time I remember thinking about the death penalty, I was in the eighth grade, and our teacher had decided to set up a debate. We'd never done debate before, and she had us choose sides between whether we were for the death penalty or against the death penalty. You know, I don't recall the arguments my opponents put forward against capital punishment. I only recall one argument that I made in favor of it, and that was that civilizations have used the death penalty for millennia, so there must be a good reason for keeping it. So I mention that only because I think that that uncritical view of capital punishment is probably quite common today. People don't think about it. It was years before I began to question that perspective. Over time, I met people who were opposed to capital punishment. And then in the mid-1990s, a priest friend invited John, my husband, and I to assist in leading Sunday services in the women's prison in Jessup, Maryland. Meeting people who were incarcerated made a huge impact on me. I remember a day in 2004, 2005, when I called the office of Maryland Governor Robert Ehrlich to ask him to halt the execution that was scheduled. The woman who answered the phone kindly said, "I'm sorry to tell you that execution took place last night." Early in 2005, a friend invited John and me to attend a meeting with the MSJC anti-death penalty team. They were meeting in Baltimore. That was the first time I became aware of the organized resistance against the death penalty. But it took me a few years more before I became actively involved in MSJC and the anti-death penalty team. The Marianist Social Justice Collaborative, or MSJC, the goal of this group is promoting education for social justice within the Marianist family, which I will describe now. So a little background. The Marianist family, also called the family of Mary, with Mary being the mother of Jesus, had its roots in the French Revolution, when the preferred method of execution was the guillotine. The three founders of the Marianist family were a priest, Father William Chaminade, a young noblewoman, Adèle de Batz de Francoeur-Young, and Marie-Thérèse de Lamoureux, a brave and deeply spiritual lay woman who served the underground church during the Revolution.
Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry.
Today, the Marianist family includes Catholic religious brothers, religious sisters, and many, many lay people like me. The Marianist charism, or their spiritual calling, is for members to be formed by Mary and sent on mission to bring Christ to the world through faith, discipleship, community, mission, and service. Currently, there are 7 justice teams within MSJC. Among the justice teams at the start was the anti-death penalty team. About a dozen years ago, we changed our name to the Death Penalty Abolition and Restorative Justice DPRJ team. Currently, our DPRJ team includes members in Maryland, Ohio, Texas, and Georgia. And the mission of our team is this: we, as members of the Marianist family, because of our belief in the sanctity of all human life and in the dignity of all persons, pledge ourselves to prayer, education, reflection, and action to abolish the death penalty. The death penalty is unjust, inhumane, and inconsistent with the gospel message. We seek to change hearts and minds concerning this injustice. And as a positive step, we promote restorative justice, a community-centered approach to justice, which views crime as a violation of people and relationships rather than simply a violation of law. Being a small group, we collaborate with a number of other groups, including, of course, Death Penalty Action, this annual fast and vigil to end the death penalty, Journey of Hope, From Violence to Healing, and Catholic Mobilizing Network. And we also collaborate with these abolition groups at the state level. Ohioans, and these are all states that have a large Marianist presence. So Ohioans to end executions, to stop executions, POTSI, the Texas Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, and most recently, Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. So we center our abolition efforts on these states that have the death penalty and where there are Marianists in large numbers. For instance, there are 3 Marianist universities in the United States: University of Dayton in Ohio, St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas, and the third one is the Chaminade University in Honolulu. Hawaii does not have the death penalty. So there is also a substantial Marianist presence in a Marianist high school in Florida. So those are why we are especially collaborating with those groups. Our team's work falls into 3 categories: prayer, education, and advocacy. An example of our emphasis on prayer was a virtual hybrid retreat entitled Mary at the Foot of the Cross, Somebody's Child. This retreat focused on Mary as a mother whose son was being executed. A big part of our education work since 2018 has been reminding American Catholics of the official Catholic teaching on the death penalty. Quote, "The Church teaches in the light of the gospel that the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person, and the Church works with determination for its abolition worldwide." Unquote. Pope Leo has consistently reiterated this message, this teaching, in a very public way, running counter to the Trump administration. And finally, recent action and advocacy efforts include sharing links to sign petitions and to make phone calls to halt executions, including to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's on my speed dial, and Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who are both Catholics. So we also write letters to stop the construction of the firing squad chamber in Idaho. Many of you are familiar with the For Whom the Bell Tolls campaign, a public witness against executions that can take various expressions, like tolling church bells for 2 minutes at the time of each execution, hanging a black drape outside the doors of your building on the day of execution, tying black ribbons outside the building, or putting out a yard sign in a visible area. So this is what the yard sign, you see what it looks like. So John and I put this in our front window. Of course, Maryland doesn't have the death penalty, but we put this in our front window every week, from Sunday to the end of the week. Every week there's an execution.
Thank you. We're also, For Whom the Bell Tolls is also sharing the meaning of these actions in their bulletins or other publications, and adding a special prayer at services the weekend prior to the scheduled executions. So who they pray for is an end to the death penalty and for healing of families and friends of the murder victims, praying for the person being executed and his or her family, their friends and their legal teams, praying for those in the courts, government, law enforcement, and corrections professions carrying out the law, and for the media. Throughout the week of each scheduled executions. And as I mentioned, we use this sign in front of the window. So finally, this year, as a justice team or DPRJ team, we decided to promote this For Whom the Bells Toll campaign, especially within the Marianist family, calling on churches and individuals to declare their opposition to each execution. So a month from now, there will be a Marianist Community National Assembly in Louisville, and our DPRJ team has created a For Whom the Bells Toll sign, the same size as the one Eve was just showing you, but with a Marianist touch. So ours looks like this, only in that size. And we're very excited. We're printing about 100 of these to hand out. And you'll see it's got our Marianist Social Justice Collaborative logo here, and the For Whom the Bells Toll logo at the bottom. Some of our future projects, one of our teams is the racial justice team and the anti-racism initiative, and we're going to be working with them to be reading the book The Cross and the Lynching Tree by James Cone. We can continue to lift up Catholic teaching on the death penalty and educating our communities on restorative justice, including raising up circle keepers. As Catholics, we're especially heartened by the Catholic churches that are teaching on the death penalty and Leo's support. He recently said, and he got in a lot of trouble for this, he stated that individuals who oppose abortion but support the death penalty are not truly pro-life.
Amen.
So, thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I'll be here the next couple of nights.
Thank
Thank you. Man, some stories tonight, a lot of information tonight. And it just all brought me back to Bill Pelkey and what he used to always say is his tagline when he closed out, love and compassion for all mankind. And just keep that in your heart tonight as you think about all this. And as you think about the movement in general, that it is about love and compassion for all mankind. It starts with you. So thank you for joining us, and see you tomorrow night. Let's get this thing packed up, folks.
Hold on. All right. Thank you, everybody. Of course, tonight is our last night of packing it up. And by the way, I want to say Jane Henderson is in the house. She helped lead the fight to abolish the death penalty in Maryland. She did that in 2013. Welcome, Jane. Thank you for coming. So we have half an hour